we're here to talk the brand new Marvel Studios entry into Phase 5, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. What?
Yeah,
we all
have you guys
saw it.
seen it?
I saw it.
It came out yesterday, and we both saw it yesterday. The thing that I was, I'll just start off Quantumania by saying this.
Okay,
The thing
good.
I was the most impressed with in the whole movie was at the end when it's revealed that the word Quantumania has the word ant and man in it, and they're centered in like on the word.
Dude, I didn't go down exactly that way, but I really had the same thought process. I remember sitting there waiting for the end credits, seeing that and going, "Oh my god, like I've never seen this like in a thing." And then it made me go like, "Ooh, did they pick the name? Like it must have just been happenstance that it worked out that way." But then I was
made
like,
you just like go down a rabbit hole of like, is this what the whole movie based on the fact that they can do that in Quantumania?
I have to add
and they
into
didn't even
this.
use that for the marketing.
Yeah.
I literally went, whoa, in the theater, like out loud. Hopefully no one heard me, but I had no idea that was coming. I had to add
Yeah, no, I was definitely surprised by that. And also
That was like the true after credit scene.
because I always thought the name was really cool, right? I thought it was like really unconventional.
It's kind of goofy, yeah.
Sounded like a theme park ride more than it did like an actual film. But yeah, no, that came to as a surprise to me too, dude. I'm glad we all kind of had the same. I imagine most people probably had that same reaction.
We didn't see it together.
No, and honestly, I haven't really even talked to you about it, hardly at all. So I really don't. I mean, I could probably guess on some.
There were a
aspects.
couple short sentences and gifs that were sent, but that's about it.
Yeah, it was a pretty bad movie. I mean, it was pretty. It's tough, right? Because I'll come right out and say it since I just built up the Love and Thunder. I did not dislike it as much as I did Love and Thunder. Movie started strong. I liked the beats at the beginning with Scott Lang and the bit about the autobiography. And then I found out later that they're actually releasing that. Did you know that they're releasing that biography that Paul Rudd is like doing?
Really? Like an actual book?
Memoir for Scott Lang that's like from the movie. So I was like, that's awesome. That's genius. And kudos to Paul Rudd for being committed to the bit that much. But yeah, it started strong. I enjoyed it when they all got sucked into the quantum realm. That was the first part where I was kind of like, oh man, I don't know now. This is weird. And one part I was stoked on it because the imagery reminded me a lot of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Like everybody being sucked in. So I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. But man, when they get to the
I think you mean the real part of that franchise was Honey, I Shrunk the Audience. Was
You're
the
right.
true gem that I worked on at Disneyland.
As soon as it gets to the quantum realm, I felt like it just went all over the place. And people say that, a lot of this movie was all over the place, but this movie was really all over the place. Vince, I couldn't help but think of you when I was watching it too, because I was like, I bet Vince is really going to dig this movie because I know like you're definitely somebody that tends to like sci-fi pulp 1950s and 60s era sci-fi horror movies. But man, I almost like it was so wacky that I either wish it doubled down on how wacky it was or it pulled back a little bit. And I don't know, honestly, I can't tell you. It was so dense.
It seemed like they were
concepts.
Yeah, it seems like they were wanted to do like a Rick and Morty live action.
Exactly.
That's almost what it seemed like.
I called it thrift store Rick and Morty, dude. And the crazy thing is like that's what I mean. I guess that's what I mean is like commit to that and do that. Don't water it down, which this movie has the fingerprints of reshoots just all over it. And I think that's probably a lot of what I'm feeling like what I'm responding to. But so that part of it was interesting and kind of fun, like it was this world in the quantum realm that you don't know what the quantum realm looks like, so you can go creative and do as much wacky things as you want. But it just made our main character suffer. And I really, number one, I couldn't get over the idea or get over the fact that this should have been the second movie. This is the movie that we've gotten when we wanted to explore where Janet Van Dyne had gone.
We talked about it. I remember that when we went to see Ant-Man and Wasp, we were like, oh, like most of the movies got to be in the quantum realm, right? Like that's pretty awesome. They can go on like this adventure story. And that's really what this one was. So it's really like the second one was almost like stalling because they knew there was going to be a third one. But yeah, and then we have the payoff here and
Or did they though? Because that's the other thing is maybe they did. The Kang element of all of this felt very shoehorned. It didn't feel like whatever original idea they had for this story and going into the quantum realm. The Kang stuff it felt so shoehorned in, and it wasn't anything in particular from the performance. It felt like, well, this is the big bad now, and it made me reflect on the Thanos in the Infinity Saga. Because the way they peppered, you didn't see Thanos, and he wasn't a major character. I mean, I guess you could argue that he kind of was in Guardians, because that's the first time you kind of see him fully rendered.
It's just like a cameo, though. Really, it's only one scene,
right? But it wasn't. I mean, he was.
You feel his presence in the first Avengers,
but he wasn't. He wasn't the main antagonist of any of those movies.
He's just alluded to vaguely. Yeah, for sure.
So it's weird now that you're shoehorning in Kang, and it feels a little bit like they're trying to cut the line. And I'm jumping all over the place, but so did this movie, so I don't really feel like it's unwarranted.
You're trying to give us the experience of the movie.
But I also struggled. Like, dude, what the hell happened to Hank Pym? Like, why is Hank Pym in this movie? He's like geriatric Hank Pym. I was so hoping. So there's like that's the way it felt. Like, Grandpa, we need to take Grandpa out. We can't leave him at home, so we're gonna take him in the quantum realm. We're gonna go on this road trip, but we're gonna have to talk to him like he doesn't understand things, or that he didn't create Pym particles, or all of the lines of dialogue we're gonna give him are obviously inserts that we just randomly threw in there that don't really have an arc for Hank Pym. What happened to the Hank Pym that they set up in the first one, who was volatile and would snap? Where did that come out? Why wasn't there, when he finds out that Janet has been down in the quantum realm having an affair for 35 years with Bill Murray, why didn't we see volatile Hank Pym come out, dude? Like,
that's by far my main thing, and this has been an issue since Ant-Man and Wasp for me. Was my number one thing is like, why? Like, it was so weird in Ant-Man and the Wasp, because the whole thing is getting Janet back. She's been stranded in this insane place for 30 years, and then it's like the first time we see her, she's able to communicate through Scott Lang, and we basically are substituting the plot and the character of her by like this joke that Scott Lang's like talking like a woman, right? I forget kind of what it was, but he's basically like, "Oh, sweetie, blah 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 blah."
Yeah,
and it's like just a joke, right? Because it's like
Steve Martin 80s comedy.
He's talking like a woman, but I'm like, so it's like a mid joke at the expense of making sense. And like, why would she talk like that? Like, she's been in the quantum realm for 30 years. Like, how is she's not completely screwed up, like psychologically, like, and that would be like such an insane thing to like find somebody in those circumstances. They don't explain it at all in that movie, and then it's like, now it's like 5 years later or whatever after Infinity War, we just had to pretend like nothing happened because of that, and now we're back here, and it's like, no, she just didn't tell anybody anything, like literally anything. It's like, you guys have like, you have your husband here, or your former husband, you have your whole family, and you guys are both scientists that studied specifically the quantum realm. So on some level, whether it's one of those things, why would you not like share what happened? And why, if you're Hank Pym or any of the other characters, were you not like, how are you just okay with her not telling you anything? They're just like, she doesn't want to talk about it. It's all good. It's like, wait, what?
It doesn't make sense from what they've set up the MCU Hank Pym to be. That's the thing I really enjoyed. I went back and I didn't rewatch Ant-Man and the Wasp because I turned it on and I was like, I remember what this was. I don't need to watch this. But the first Ant-Man movie, I really like what Michael Douglas did in the way that they portrayed Hank Pym. Like I said, he was super volatile. And even though he was an older guy, you still like situations would come out to where he would have these over the top reactions to things. And I just like, there's another movie here that's more ballsy that they either didn't want to do, or it got chopped up and a bunch of stuff got reshot and a bunch of stuff got shoehorned in just so that we can fit the Kangness of it all. But I didn't understand.
He's like that. Grandpa. He is kind of like a grandpa, because you have Cassie in a much bigger role in this, and he's almost like acting like her grandpa.
But going back really quick to what you said, because I wanted to piggyback that of what you like, in the way that Ant-Man and the Wasp use that comedic bit to undercut the characters, I felt like that was just rife throughout this movie. And it just made everything suffer, in my opinion, because you number one, the trailer and what they sold this as was not this movie. Normally, I don't really care. Like, everybody gets all up in arms about like, oh, the trailer they put in stuff that wasn't in the movie. They're trying to lie to you. I'm like, dude, no. You really expect them to put major plot points and characters and surprises in the trailer? And I almost appreciate that they do that. But in this one, the overall plot, they try to make it seem like it was this story about Scott Lang and his daughter, and that's not what it was at all. It ended up becoming about
yeah. It was like kind of that, but also kind of another thing, and also kind of another thing. And I think that was another thing I have on my list too. Is like they sort of just like took a bunch of different ideas they had and tried to do all of them, so like none of them were sort of really flushed out. That's such a huge thing that you mentioned too about like the comedy, because so much of the comedy in this like either didn't land or just kind of like, you know, like going back to like 10 years ago Marvel, you know, you had all these like DC Snyder people or whatever, like people that wanted to hate on the MCU and everything, you know, they'd be like, oh, the movies are formulaic, blah blah blah, and it's like, dude, no, they're not. Like, they're doing all these different things. Like, just because they're funny doesn't mean like. But this movie to me seemed exactly like that, where I was like, I could see when I was watching it, it was like I could see the script, and it was like, oh, we want to have X amount of jokes here, and it ended up being this like what felt like a formula of like plot, joke, plot, joke. Even when the jokes weren't funny, and the jokes were like at the expense of like characters, because when the MCU is at its best, you know, when you have like, particularly from like the Russo brothers movie, the jokes are integrated in the character, and that's what makes them amazing. Like the one I always go back to is like Endgame, where Groot and Thor, you know, and Rocket appear on the battlefield, and you know, Groot's like, I am Groot, and then, you know, Steve's like, I am Steve Rogers. Like, that's funny, like in and of itself, but like it's funny because of how earnest we know that Steve Rogers is. Like, it's grounded in that reality. And like when this movie did those type of things, they were just sort of jokes to be joke, and so it almost like took you away from the immersion of the movie, because you had to be distracted by this joke that was kind of outside the movie, and then it was like, okay, well, back to being kind of serious. Okay, well, back to a joke. Okay, well, kind of serious.
Well, they're jokes that are not set up. They're jokes that are just punchlines, and the way that they're used is almost transitionally. What you just described of Groot and Steve Rogers, that's a joke that's been set up for freaking years, and movies that have come before it.
Because we know his character. It's all grounded. Yeah.
There's none of that stuff here. There's no setup for anything. It's like a lot of what they established these characters to be, they went back on, and they weren't part of these characters anymore. The Cassie Lang of it all didn't work for me at all. I didn't care about her. I didn't understand why she had a suit. I didn't understand why she was the one that created the signal to the quantum realm. And like, has Janet just not been there the entire time she's developing this to tell her like, hey, that's not a good idea, and here's why?
Yeah, so those are the elements. It was really convenient that everything happened at the same moment in that first scene to be like, wait, you guys are talking to the quantum realm? It's like, wait, really? Hank never mentioned this in the last 3 years you guys have like been hanging out?
Right.
Like,
and
does no one communicate anything ever in your family?
And is nobody helping her? Like, nobody's around her when you're not at dinner, and you all have the same interests in this very specific scientific field, but yet you're not going to talk about it, or you're not going to bounce ideas. So they're just,
and then they get there, and Hank's like, whoa, this is crazy. I didn't know this was here. And she's like, oh yeah, duh, this is the quantum realm. It's like, wait, what? You guys never talked about it?
Or what about the She-Hulk like conversation Cassie has with Steve with Scott Lang in the car? Hope is in there, who doesn't say anything. Hope's only here in this movie to be like, yeah, or no, or what, or what. I cannot believe how they butchered that character. I cannot believe how like everything that they established before, they call it Ant-Man and the Wasp, and they just have never given.
Yeah, they have co-billing, dude.
They've never given anything to the Wasp. They didn't give anything to her in the last movie. Anyway, they're in the car, and Cassie's like, what have you done, Dad? I'm out here with the protesters. What have you done? He literally saved the entire, like, all of existence.
Yeah.
And was the one true catalyst in defeating Thanos with the rat. You got to give the rat credit. But it's like, you're gonna come at him. It just, the whole premise of it was flimsy, and it just,
I mean, it's like a teen angst kind of thing, but like, yeah, then it was like, I didn't even remember that scene, because then Hope too like takes her side or something, like when she's like,
I don't remember.
No, you're being hard on her, or like whatever. It's like, no, he is. Like,
no, he's not.
Like, what are you talking about?
Give him a little bit of respect here. Like, stop treating him like he's Tim the Toolman Taylor, and give him a little bit of respect here. I mean, yeah, he makes jokes, but he's like a legit hero. though, and you're just I don't know.
Yeah.
So it felt that was very She-Hulky and very, you know, I mean, it's kind of in line with the same trend as everything we're seeing. All the male heroes get crapped on and are, you know, talked about or the butt of joke, which is fine, whatever. I thought the end of that scene was really great though. The joke with the audiobook that he's listening to in his car. I thought that was really funny. And
yeah, I thought that was funny too.
There are moments here that where, you know, of course Paul Rudd does his thing and he's really funny. And then it takes a turn and it's like, you know, you go from one scene about some alien amoeba creature talking about he doesn't have any holes and then he only respects humans because they all have holes. But yet the next scene you're having this like touching moment between I think that would work if it was executed right. Like to be honest, that's
like
what I'm saying.
because I feel like okay, let's take the whole creature thing for example. Like okay, that's like kind of funny and cute or whatever, but like there were so many choices in this movie that felt kind of just like random. Like they just brainstormed for like 15 minutes and then just kind of went with whatever they thought of without like tying things together. Because like obviously that whole conversation was to set up the end where he gets shot and has a hole and then like eats the other guy with his hole. So it's like a callback. Right. But it's like in the first place it like wasn't that funny in the first place and didn't make that much sense because I'm like he's fascinated with your holes as a human, but looking around like half the people in the quantum realm look exactly like humans and are basically are humans. So I'm like, why are you asking him how many holes you have? He looks the exact same as the person standing right next to you, who would obviously have the same amount of holes. Like it's just things like that don't quite make sense.
Let's talk about MODOK. This is going to be the thing everybody talks about.
Alcohol Vince is back, baby.
Oh dang. Yeah.
Oh, now you're not whiskey Vince. You're just general alcohol Vince.
Red-faced fucking drunk Vince. Let's go.
Wow, that's an aggressive.
Here comes the F-bombs. It's funny because we never have F-bombs. The only F-bombs come from Vince, and I have to like, do I leave this in here or do I take it out? Oh, it's half his dialogue. Okay, I'll leave it in.
It's all Vince
He's the degenerate of the...
I'm the MODOK of the group, dude.
He's the less...
I'm a dick,
dude,
all right?
You're the MODOK, dude. You've always been the MODOK of the group.
Yeah, dude, it's my little arms.
Yeah, so I thought MODOK was the stupidest thing ever. I can't believe that they put that in there, and I don't... The way they did it, I'm just like, why did you do it that way? Like, take out the bad CG. That's whatever. Half the CG in this movie was good, and half wasn't, in my opinion, but...
Yeah, some of it looked pretty green screeny, I thought.
I just, like... I can't believe they used Darren Cross. If you would have picked anybody else, like your whole premise is that you're in the quantum realm and like Kang created MODOK. So why it could have been anybody else, could have been any other actor. I mean, that to me was the part I disliked about it the most. They tried to shoehorn him in there and it just like it didn't work.
I feel like it was like that thing where they're thinking about it as like, wait, Ant-Man's a trilogy, but like it doesn't seem like a trilogy because it's kind of like this one is just so different than where the first one was. So like, how do we find a way to tie it back? Oh, Darren Cross. That's how we tie it back.
But dude, I just wish that they would have gone any other way with it. You know, I wish that they would have. If I understand MODOK is not going to be easy to do in a live action setting. Like it's going to be tough. The premise of MODOK is wacky and works a lot better in a comic book. But there's a way you could have done it.
Yeah, I didn't hate that. Like the whole time it was happening, I had to keep thinking like, do I like this or hate it? I'm not really totally sure. Like, I'm stoked that we got to see a live action MODOK. I'm glad that they showed his real face, like, because at first, you know, you see his like armored face, and I'm like, oh, I hope it's not just like the armored face. And then lifts up and you see his like literal massive face. It looks like the most goofy thing ever. I kind of don't mind that. I'm like, that's just like,
I'm 100% with you, Dave, where I was like, okay, this is shitty, but also it's a character that I never imagined would actually be in one of these movies. And like, how do you make it not shitty? It's freaking MODOK.
And I am stoked. I did like how they had like they really emphasized his like very small mini hands, and they also I think you see his MODOK butt at one point.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, you do. You see MODOK. Dude, did they need to spend? Because I disagree with that. I wish that they would have just. I felt like it would have worked so much better if they would have kept his mask on. But with that being said, they spent so many times in close up, like in a close up of him, that I was just
at
like,
least
why are you doing this,
dude? At least they committed to it. That's all I'm gonna say.
They committed to. That's the only like bit they committed to was MODOK, and they committed.
I
don't know. I didn't dig it.
It was a ballsy move bringing back Darren Cross as MODOK, dude.
I mean, ballsy's
for better or worse, that's a ballsy move. I was sort of like, yeah, but I will say like really more of the negativity of that crept in when we got to the like sort of trying too hard comic relief of it, where like we had to have this like heartfelt moment with like Cassie talking to him, and he's sitting there and he's just like,
I know,
and she's like, you shouldn't be bad or whatever, and
don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick. And then he's sitting there and he's just like, I am such a dick, or like whatever he says, and I'm like, dude, why would MODOK be self-aware that he was a dick? MODOK would never accept that he was a dick, dude.
Also, how does MODOK know who the Avengers are? Like, he's been in the quantum realm, right?
That's a good point, dude.
The Avengers were formed when he was
yeah, actually they were, because Ant-Man is after the first Avengers, so he would have known him from Battle of New York.
Oh, you're right.
Technically.
But he didn't know Scott Lang was in the Avengers.
No, that was obviously just like a wink. Again, a thing, right, that we're talking about that doesn't fully make sense. Yeah. But it's just like a wink at the camera. I mean, I did think that was kind of funny that it's like, I don't know, when he's like, at least I die in Avenger.
See, like just Dave's responses to all this MODOK stuff. Like it wasn't well done, but it was funny, dude. Like there was
parts that were funny. I definitely laughed at that part because Scott Lang's like, what does he say back to it? He's like,
you're in.
Sure, bud. You're in. That's
so
pretty funny, dude.
Yeah, I mean, Paul Rudd was great. And
does it make sense? Not really, but like, whatever. In a vacuum, that's pretty funny.
I had something to add to it. Dave, you're talking about how it kind of was like plot joke. I feel like the best description of that being the case was when Scott Lang was like multiplying, and they had the one version of him as the Baskin Robbins guy, and it completely defeated everything they were going with in the sense of like, oh, each one is going to duplicate, because there was only one of those, so it was specifically him there as a joke, but he never multiplied. Everyone else did, and then that one joke was just there as a joke and nothing more.
Yeah, what did you think of Kang?
I like despised everything that character was in Loki so much that I was a little bit like, I guess I was a little bit like surprised that it worked. I mean, you know, obviously like he brought like a little bit of like sadness to it, his like bravado that I thought was pretty good.
Yeah, I thought also Kang in action was pretty awesome, like the visuals of it, you know, of him just blasting people. And I thought, you know, in terms of a one movie bad guy, which we know he's going to be the bad guy in the, you know, the overall multiverse saga, but I thought as the main antagonist of this movie was pretty good, you know, and that fight scene between him and Scott I thought was kind of awesome, although there was a couple scenes where I could tell the stunt like that it wasn't Paul Rudd, which obviously we know it's not Paul Rudd really fighting, but there were two scenes where I was like, whoa, they didn't try to hide that wasn't Paul Rudd. But I thought Kang, you know, it's interesting, you know, I saw a lot of people bitch about him dying in this one, which I don't obviously, and who knows if he's dead, but I honestly thought that was the right choice, because if you're establishing this powerful being that is in every timeline and wants to conquer every timeline, I thought that was an interesting perspective, because it's a reminder to the audience that he might be gone, but there's all of these different you know, variants of it.
You can easily get away with it because there's literally thousands of other Kangs, so it just doesn't even matter.
Which they show you at the end, but the council.
And speaking of that, I'll say something good. I thought his suit was really awesome. It was like so comic accurate, but also like just genuinely like looked cool. Like they pulled off a straight from the comic.
Morality is out the window at that point, and anything that's like a human factor of morality and or like what we think good and evil. Like when you're that big and that strong, like even the Eternals that we watched, like the whole hang up was like, oh, you can't kill planets to feed yourself or to spawn something new. But like in that case, it doesn't matter because the greater good. And
Eternals was basically like, that's another reason I was a little bit bummed at Eternals, because they basically did Galactus in that a little bit, right? Like what you're saying, like, because that is Galactus too, where it's like, well, it's all just feeding like a higher power of balance.
Yeah,
so it's almost
and
like
it's all here to
your mortal souls don't even mean anything.
Yeah, so I love all those aspects. Much like you guys said about this movie, it was not done very well. Me and Eli kind of talked about it because I saw it at 3. I loved all the like the sci-fi aspects of it. I loved the Holes guy. I thought it was funny. It definitely was humor to be humor. I love the Holes guy. Eli mentioned that it was like a bad version of Rick and Morty, and that instantly I was like, oh crap, yeah, it is, dude. Like I'm censoring myself now.
It just felt like
darn.
they were fans of Rick and Morty, and they obviously modeled a lot of this stuff, I think, similarly to that show. But number one, Rick and Morty were probably 2 to 3 years past its like relevancy, I think, and especially now with everything going on with it. But I just
bad timing now.
But I just felt like they didn't really commit to it, and that's the thing that I can almost see. I wonder if they committed to it more in whatever initial version before they went and did a bunch of reshoots. Because I saw something today on comic book, I think it was.com, that was talking about they had a leaked plot of the original version. It was like way different. So, all that being said, like I said, I didn't hate it as much as Thor: Love and Thunder. There were elements of this movie that were still fun, that were enjoyable to watch. I think, I'm a fan of like colorful things, and, it's definitely a colorful world. I just wish that it made sense a little bit more. And I wish that in some of the areas they chose to go uber wacky, they would have grounded it a little bit more and made it a little bit, because I think, all of the different ingredients of a family adventure movie, then you have a multiverse movie, and then you have, basically Star Wars-esque wannabe of like, we're going into this world with all these different creatures and humanoid looking people that aren't humans. So I just felt like all of those things were all trying to be their own movie, and I don't think it made for a cohesive movie in general, but also a cohesive movie in the MCU that, other than really establishing Kang a little bit more, I don't feel like it gave us much other than like we're going to make a pit stop right here with Scott Lang, and then we're going to keep on moving with phase 5, and it just didn't feel like there was a lot of stakes. But I honestly, one of the other things, this is is going to sound contradictory, but I also like wouldn't mind seeing it again, because there's so much stuff packed into it that, and this movie I almost feel like could have used another 10 to 15 minutes. I appreciate the 2 hour and 5 minute runtime. I think most movies need to be that, and a shorter runtime serves movies that are hurt a little bit by having a longer runtime. But this one, I think you could have used some of that stuff to breathe, instead of, as soon as they get down into the quantum realm, it just kind of sprints off in all different directions.
It was way too fast paced and not enough explaining. 100%. And then I think I texted Eli. I was like, I don't know if it's just me, since I've seen so many of the Disney Plus shows, but now at some cases like this, I wish that they made the universe. I wish this was a Disney Plus show. I wish they took 10 hours to explain the universe, slow down, tell the story rather than just rush through, because they're trying to set up everything that's coming next all in one movie, it feels like. And
they even say in it like, oh, this has been the craziest day ever or whatever. And then you're like, oh yeah, this whole movie's literally in one day, which seems like a little bit.
I really wish that they would have taken the Ant-Man and the Wasp off the title, just called this Quantumania. I keep calling, I don't know if you guys do that. I call it Quantumania.
Quantumaniac.
It's like a something on the, what is it? God, I'm so dumb. The
Quantumaniacs.
The element table or whatever, periodic table. Anyway, take off Ant-Man and the Wasp, call it Quantumania, and do it, like, flip the perspectives. Like, do Kang as your lead character and follow him through the quantum realm. Mix in Scott Lang and whatever, like, sell it from the opposite side of Janet Van Dyne's story. Have him tell the story, and have him, like, them coming back into the quantum realm be part of his master plan, and how he got back out of the quantum realm. I think that would have been awesome, and I think you could have still done what this movie wanted to do, which was, get the concept of Kang out. You could have really explored the quantum realm more. You could have put the, Scott Lang and family, band aspect of it a little bit more on the back burner, and continue on with it. I don't know. There's just something missing from this one.
Yeah, I categorize it as like frustratingly mediocre, because like there were things that I liked and like visually thought were cool and stuff, and like, but it was almost like good enough to where like I could see how it could be a lot better, and that was frustrating. I was just gonna go back to Kang, like the after credits. I was a little bit confused with that too. Like, was it like? I guess it was supposed to be both like scary and silly, but I'm also kind of like, why are they assembling?
I don't know either. Like, that's,
they're like, I guess they're kind of leaving it open ended, like a lot of after credits are, but like they're kind of like, it seems like they're talking about the MCU characters. They're like, they're just getting into the foray of realizing what this all is, like, we need to assemble. And it's like, why are you assembled thousands of kangs and all the kangs are like super stoked and insane and screaming and like I don't know. I need to know more about what the context of that
and
is.
also, why isn't this more reactionary to what happened in the Infinity Saga? You know, what if the Council of Kings moving on this was a response to the timeline?
Yeah, that would actually be sweet to be like, oh, because we know that out of literally millions of possibilities, they only beat Thanos in potentially one or extremely few. And so you think that would get the attention of the Kangs to be like, this universe, they're the ones that were able to like defeat Thanos and pull out all these miracles. That'd be cool.
But also, Thanos would be a massive threat because he would signal that, like, oh, we're not the only ones that are conquering time. Like, Thanos had the gauntlet. So he was not only going to conquer time, but he was going to conquer everything else, you know, that the Infinity Stones gave him power over. So it just feels like you could have connected that a little bit more. It just feels like we're really disconnected. And you know, you kind of feel in reflecting on where the MCU is at now with this new big bad that they're trying to establish, it forces you to look back in the previous phases and, you know, all the way up to Endgame and see how they peppered Thanos in and interwoven the gems and how they got them, and, you know, everything from Guardians out in space to Cap in 1944 and
well, I hope it's not like what Loki alludes to in that, like, they're like, we use Infinity Stones as paperweights. Ha ha ha. This new threat's going to be so much cooler than Thanos. It's like, we don't need to keep one-upping everything. That doesn't make something interesting. Like, to the same point where it's like, not everybody needs to now be smarter than Tony Stark. Like, we don't have to keep saying, well, they built the same thing when they were 5. Like, that doesn't make a character, like, interesting. Like, I hope that we can continue to, like, respect the past while, like, still bringing in something that's just different.
Man, that statement can just encompass so many things outside of just the MCU, you know? That would make the world a better place, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I have a couple other things here that I was going to bring up with the movie. Like, I know we've been talking about it, but one thing, like, okay, you were kind of asking like were the characters really like consequential? And there were so many characters in this. And I also thought it was weird that like Scott Lang is like seemingly the protagonist, but yet he doesn't really like push the story forward like much at all. They get in the quantum realm because of Cassie, and it kind of seemed like from the second they get in the quantum realm, all Scott cares about is Cassie, like the whole movie, which is like cool. Like, I get that. Like, it's a you know, kind of that father-daughter dynamic. But at the same time, I did kind of think it was odd that like Scott is kind of just very reactionary at that point, that you wouldn't typically see like a protagonist being. It's kind of interesting when like I don't know, he kind of like agrees to like get this thing for Kang, even though he knows of like the dangers of letting Kang out. Like, he still sacrifices it for Cassie, which is again like fine, like that's a heroic thing, but like, I don't know. Yeah, he just felt really like almost like he wasn't the protagonist. It was almost like Janet sort of becomes like more of the 100%. Protagonist because she's the only one that knows what's going on.
They should have called it Janet Quantumania. That would have made way more sense. It just like, yeah, I agree with that. And what it did is it made it suffer because also like you still have the Janet and Hope dynamic hanging out there. And I imagine that there's things that are left unsaid there. If you haven't told them about, you know, a 35-year affair you had with Bill Murray in the quantum realm, like there's also other stuff, you know?
Yeah. That's the theme of this movie. That's the moral of this movie is, hey, just communicate with people about obvious things, and you could just have stopped this whole thing from happening.
Yeah, for sure.
But I did think that I did like most of Michelle Pfeiffer's like performance in general. I thought she was pretty good,
and she looks great. Like, let's acknowledge
that.
Dude,
she looks amazing, dude. She has some kind of maybe she has the same thing that that some of the other characters also have. Like, I mean, Paul Rudd just never ages. Maybe Michelle Pfeiffer has whatever he's smoking. I don't know.
It's peyote, I think.
Maybe peyote. But yeah, looking on Rotten Tomatoes, it's at a 48% critically, which is that the lowest?
Yeah.
MCU movie so far.
That's the lowest before this was Eternals. So that, but look at the audience score though. That's
84% audience. Yeah.
I can see, honestly, I can see how people can also like this movie. There's a lot of colorful, flashy things. I think Kang is really serviceable in the movie. There's things that they leave out. Is that on purpose? Is it just a plot hole thing? But I can see how people could like this movie. But I just, in terms of like everything in the MCU, you have to take the lens of the entire MCU. So that there's just some of the magic in that I feel like is gone. But I wouldn't give it a 48%. I would give it a solid 50. That would be my.
That's generous, dude. Hey, nice.
I think that's fair.
That extra 2%.
I think most of them are 50%.
That reminded me of one more thing I was going to say. The whole Michael Douglas thing about the 1,000-year-old ant thing was also another thing that was like sort of out of left field. Dude, when he's like, oh well, when these ants fell through the thing, they fell it like a different way, and they lived like 1,000 years.
I know,
and it's like, wait, what,
dude? And they established the like, oh, these ants are building a colony, and they built their own tech, which is so stupid. But also, like, when they go through the portal and they're flying down to the quantum realm, I totally saw like 3 ants go in with them, and I remember thinking, oh, that's gonna pay off later. But I didn't anticipate that there would be thousands of ants. That show up.
Yeah, so it's like, wait, those ants just happened to, some weird thing happened that they lived 1,000 years. So any of you, that same thing like could have happened.
Yeah. Dave, I'm with you.
To give Michael Douglas his own arc to be like, he comes in with ants at the end.
Dude, can you imagine? Okay, so go with me on this premise, and we're running long on this review, but whatever. We got opinions.
We have 3 minutes.
What if it was Michael Douglas that helped Kang out of the quantum realm? When he gets down in there, finds out that Janet had an affair, has lived this other life for 35 years, and is just devastated by it. So then it becomes he goes off on his own, and Kang manipulates that situation and is like, I saw them, they were a great couple down here. Like really like
that would be interesting.
Things, and like take the craziness of Hank Pym from the comics and bring that back into play. They set it up in the first one so well.
It was extremely like, it was just like, oh yeah, well, I hooked up with other people, and they're like, okay, and like it was, yeah.
And then didn't Michael Douglas even say that he had like a side chick for a little bit? Yeah, yeah. Dave, I'm with you with the ant.
It's like, wait, you guys never discussed this again in years. You guys never came up.
The ant thing was so blindsiding. Like what? Like there is stage 2 society now, and they're blah blah blah, and like
and then it flashes back to all this stuff that had no consequence in the movie. You're like, wait,
no sense at all.
And then he's like, well, I know socialism's a bad word, but
yeah, dude. Oh my god.
Which is like comparing ants to socialism doesn't really help the cause all that much.
It's like, wait, so you're saying that like it's a hive mind? And,
it's a hive mind of followers, and
there's just capitalist ants somewhere. They're like, these guys are the problem.
Maybe don't do that. Yeah, that's funny, man. All right, well, I guess that's all we should say about that.
What grade would you give it?
Man, I guess like a C.
Finny? B plus.
I'm going C plus on that bad boy.
C plus.
C plus.
Again, it's the respect of giving them ending it with a plus.
I'm never going a full grade.
I almost went C minus, and I was like, no, Vince is gonna be sad if I.
Dude, he only did the plus because he was trying to be divergent from your score. Let's be honest. It's the only reason you give a plus or minus to anybody.
Only one of us can have a C grade.
I'm giving it a C plus because they tried. They didn't achieve, but they tried, dude.
That's not good enough.
Dude, I want to add...
They did try.
I want to add, how funny would that whole alien guy be if he judged everyone based off of how many holes they had? They're like, that's Rick. He has 7 holes.
That's already more interesting.
It is, dude. And like, he doesn't talk to people that have less than 3 holes, dude.
So you only have 4 holes.
He's all,
dude, John, they have also they established the character, the guy from The Good Life, right?
Yeah.
Good Place.
Yeah, The Good Place.
Dude, and he can read people's minds. Why don't they know what Kang is thinking? Like, why haven't they been able to overtake Kang? Because they have the tactical advantage of knowing his next move. That was weird.
Yeah, that was interesting. I can't even remember why that guy had telekinetic powers to read minds. That was kind of funny too, but also kind of random. Also,
it wasn't like
didn't really play out.
Yeah.
When he was in talks with Marvel, everybody thought he was going to be Reed Richards, which is hilarious in hindsight. Which yeah.
He was probably reading that, being like really bummed out.
He's like, oh my god.
He's like, could I? Is that on the table? Could I?
It says I'm just a telekinesis guy in the script, but
but maybe that's the reimagined Reed Richards.
There was a Reed in some variant, right? That could read minds.
He's like, my powers do nothing to achieve anything in the story.
He's like, maybe I'm the new Professor X or Emma Frost. I can read people's minds.
Emma Frost.
He's like, look, I'll take any mutant that can be on a toy or a lunchbox.
Just not
very
Ben
reimagined Emma. Okay.
All right. Well,
Eli, what's your score?
We can't just make somebody hot blonde. They got to be different.
I'm sticking with 50% on this one, dude.
50%.
What grade does that equate?
That's not passing, dude. That's an F
minus, dude.
Yeah. That's a fail, dude. That's a fail grade.
Yeah, I'm okay. I don't.
Yeah, but it's got to be more than that because Love and Thunder was like.
Yeah, you're right. Love and Thunder is the F.
Give it a D.
Iron Man 3 at this point is looking a whole hell of a lot better than it did a couple years ago.
It doesn't look that bad anymore.
Dude. But I would say, okay, I would give it a D.
We're sorry, Shane Black.
I'd give a D. Come back, Shane Black, please.
Please usher in the next phase.
We'll take your Mandarin shit jokes. Just come back, please.
Did you say a D plus?
So bad.
At least it was all a dream sequence. Just come back, please. But yeah, I'll give it a D plus. And I, like I said, I meant that. I'm not going to go see it in theaters, but when it comes on Disney Plus, I'll be stoked to watch it again, just to see if now that I know what the story is.
I mean, being down to see it again seems like decent. Like you didn't hate it too much.
Well, I mean, couple that with my confusion and needing to answer certain questions and missing pieces of the plot.
But you're also a glutton for punishment.